fix a society that's been broken by unjust enrichment, corruption, inflated rates of interest being foisted upon the poor. It can only help to heal feelings of disconnect. It can strengthen relationships and engender a feeling of brotherhood within a community. It can't solve all of the structural economic injustices in a society. And here is where I want to get to my final and more critical point. In classical Islamic law and ethics, zakat is distributed within a local community based on relationships that exist. In fact, it's best to give to needy family members, because if everyone takes care of their extended family, not the ones that you're required to support, like your children or your parents or your spouse, but cousins or aunts or uncles or others, you should give to your neighbor. The Prophet Muhammad's wife asked him, I have some extra food to give, and I have two neighbors. Which one, to which one should I give this? And he said, to the one whose door is closest to you. So there's an almost palpable sense in the Islamic teachings that closeness creates this obligation. So you've got to take care of those who are closest, and then next and next and next. And if everyone does that, then most people should be taken care of, although there will always be those who are outside of that. That's why a category like the wayfarer is designated as one of the 8 zakat recipients. But what these pre-modern texts assume is that there will be neighborhoods in which there are these existing relationships. If we look at the situation in contemporary America with the Muslim community, it is not as easy as that. We have major disconnects in our community. Relationships are already take work to build across cultural and ethnic and racial lines. The Gallup Foundation in their 2009 study showed that the Muslim American community is the most ethnically diverse religious community in America. Approximately 35% African American, I think 26% white, 18% Asian, and then about 18-19% other. It's this really interesting pie chart. Almost every other community has about 70 or 80 or 90% of one racial group in their that coincides with their congregation. So already there's a need to cross barriers, linguistic barriers, ethnic barriers, cultural barriers. There's a lot. There are many things that this. I have to say that anecdotally, Muslims will say our diversity is our strength, but they'll also say it's a great challenge to feel like we're one community when we speak different languages. It's hard to set priorities when our families are in different countries and different neighborhoods. If family has a right on us, and if we think about those immigrants, those immigrants to Long Island who came and were doctors. They came to this country when they were maybe 24, 25 years old. That means that those peasants and farmers and their neighbors and their extended family in Pakistan or India or Egypt, they're the ones who fed them and raised them so that they could get to the point that they could come to this country and now, finish medical school or engineering and go on and be affluent, extremely affluent relative to the people back home. So to send remittances back home has to be an ethical obligation for them. Really, there's a moral obligation. They are, in the end, have a right. They are part of them. But this is a global economy. So they're part of them, but you're also part of this community. Because certainly, as you live in New York or Chicago or Indianapolis, it's also the people in your city, the truck drivers and the people who run the shops and everyone else. If you're a doctor, the person who cleans the the floor of the hospital, all those people also make it possible for you to have your life and be successful in what you do. So how do you balance this? And more difficult than anything is the economic demographic segregation in this country, where neighborhoods correlate to an economic group. I mean, in most American cities, it's very clear, you know, if you look at the profiles of the incomes of people who live in there, we are segregated by our incomes and our affluence. So it's very easy for people in a community, say they're a middle-class community or upper middle class, to feel that they really are fulfilling their obligation. They look around them, they establish scholarships for kids in their community, they're giving lots of money to the mosque, all of these things, they're sending money back home. You know, they're always giving. But 10, 20 miles away, there's another community that can't even meet its needs, that can't even keep the lights on in the mosque. When are they ever going to get there? It's not a natural place. Their work's not there. Their home's not there. The highways are built so they don't have to drive through that neighborhood. So how are they going to get there? And this is the problem. This is what causes a major gap, because we've also seen, according to the Gallup information, that the relative affluence of Asian Americans and the relative poverty of African Americans in the general community is the same in the Muslim community. So Asian American Muslims tend to be much more affluent than African American Muslims. In fact, African American Muslims are poorer than African Americans generally. So there's a big gap. And what do we do about that? You know, what does that say about the concept of Islam as justice, Islam as brotherhood? And so this is where my suggestion is, and my, you know, that then I hope we can talk about in our discussion, is this. There has to be a different way of looking at zakat. First of all, you know, if we go back to this category of giving zakat to things like mosques, I would argue that they should not be given to mosques unless they're mosques in poor areas. So the category of being a mosque is not enough, but if it's a mosque or a school and poor, then the money can go there. And in fact, rates of giving to mosques and Islamic centers are relatively low compared to Christian denominations. So the people who have money can afford to do that. They can afford to pay higher membership fees. So that if they want to give to a mosque, do it, but only in a poor community. What does that mean? It means you have to go there. You have to see what they need. You have to go to that neighborhood. You have to assess it. And that way, there can be some help. And it's important because other studies, a study done by Ihsan Bagbi at the University of Kentucky, shows that it is affluent and educated Muslims who believe that the mosque should be a center for cultural activities, social activities, educational activities. That means that their mosques are $10 million, $20 million mosques. So if we directed zakat, all of their zakat towards that, what's going to be left over? Whereas Muslim Americans with lower education and lower income levels are looking for something a lot simpler. So this is an important point. But finally, what I want to say is, well, in traditional societies, zakat is a way to strengthen existing relationships. I believe that for at least part of our zakat giving, we have to flip that. And we have to make a zakat an instrument of establishing relationships with those who we don't have any relationship with at this time. So if Muslim Americans were required to give at least, made it as a personal goal, to give, say, a third of their annual zakat to a community or individuals who are truly poor, relatively to themselves, it means that they're going to have to go out, unless they have, they live in a mixed neighborhood, they're going to have to go out of their neighborhood. They're going to have to look for those people and find those who are qualified to receive the zakat. Now, this means that the zakat becomes a tool for establishing a relationship. And then it's the relationship that can form the basis for some solidarity that can address the kind of structural injustices that need to be addressed. Because remember, I said zakat is not a cure-all. It cannot solve structural injustices in a society. But you're not going to consider it a priority unless you have a relationship with the people who are affected by those structural injustices. So to take a certain percent of the zakat, force yourself to find those people outside of your community within America who are deserving, and then you have a new relationship. On the basis of that relationship, then engage in solidarity, social justice, policy, advocacy, lobbying, whatever it is that will lift up everyone and help remove some of the causes of their poverty and deprivation. So that's my new suggestion, and I'd be happy to hear your comments and questions. Thank you.